This is tutorial 7-1 in GIS tutorial workbook 3. In this tutorial, we're going to be getting started with ModelBuilder. And the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be opening up our tutorial 7-1 mix file. Then we're going to open up our catalog tab. And in here, we're going to go down to toolboxes. And on my toolboxes, we're going to make a new one. And we're going to call it Library Models. Then we're going to set up our geoprocessing options and our workspace. Now, we're going to be using our catalog quite a bit, so make sure that the pin is pointed down. If it's to the side, click it. That way, if I click out here, it doesn't go away. So I'm going to go to Geoprocessing, go to Geoprocessing Options. Now, I already have the option selected because I've used ModelBuilder quite a bit. Now, you want overwriting the outputs of geoprocessing operations checked. What this will do is if you have an item with the same name, it will override it rather than come up with an error. It can be dangerous if you do it accidentally. You can ruin a shapefile you don't want, so be careful with that. But in many cases, it's just a shapefile you don't really care about, and you just want to easy something to type and just hold its place. Then for ModelBuilder down here, make sure this is checked, and then click OK. Then go up to Geoprocessing Environments, go to Workspace, and we're going to browse to My Answers in GIS T3, and we're going to click on City of Olander for both of these workspaces. Now all our work will be saved in those geodatabases. Now we're going to right-click on Library Models, and we're going to add a new model. We're going to go to Model Parameter, or Properties, and we're going to give it a name. And it's going to be Patron Notification. Now the first name is one word, label is 2, and the user selects an apartment complex, and this model generates a list of library patrons within half mile. And then make sure store relative path names is selected. Now later in the tutorial, we're going to make it to where we can actually choose the distance, that it's not automated. So if you were to do that in a model that you're going to be using, you might want to change the description to note that the distance can be changed. We're just going to click OK. Then we're going to click Save. And as you can see now over here, it went from being just model to patron notification. And we're going to add our first tool into our model. So we want to open up our search window. Now you could do this from the toolbar, Arc toolbox, but this is much easier. Just click and pull it over here. Zoom out a little bit. Now it's no color in it because nothing is set. So we're just going to double click on it. And just as if we were using buffer in ArcMap, the way we normally do, we just go out about doing it. Now we want to choose apartment complexes to buffer. Output feature, they want us to leave as is. And they want us to make a distance of half a mile, which is 2,640. And then all other options stay the same. Then we just click OK. And as you can see, it placed it in a new oval for apartment complexes. our tool in our output. And if we hover over buffer, it tells us all the options for that. Next, we're going to do our select layer by location. Some of the tool names are different when you're using it in ARC or in ModelBuilder. Normally, we just call this select by location. Now here it's called select layer by location. When it's on our chart, our window here, we're going to use the connect tool, which is this guy right here. And we're going to click on this green oval, our output for the buffer, and click on the select layers. When I click on it, this box opens up, and I choose select featuring or selecting features. And then I go back to using the element. Now it didn't fill in with color, and if I hover over, I can see that's because it does not have an input feature layer. So we're going to open that up, and we're going to choose aggregated patron locations. We want an intersect. Apartment complexes buffer 2 is already selected. We don't have a search distance, and we want to make it a new selection. Okay. Now, working with models, they can get kind of cluttered. There's this option up here called auto layout, and if I click on it, it will organize it to where it runs more neat looking. And you might want to go full extent and then zoom out a little bit. That way it just centers it. Okay, now we want to add our last tool, which is copy rows. Click and drag. Use the connect tool. Input rows. Everything is selected for that. Now what we want to do is we want to see what we want to keep and what we don't want to keep. Now they're interested in knowing the addresses for the people living within the half mile, not interested in the actual buffer. So what you're going to want to do is right click on the output for buffer and make sure that it's an intermediate, meaning that it'll be kept there until we no longer want it, and then it's gone. But make sure that it's added to display. And then once we get rid of this mix file, it's no longer on our computer and it's not wasting space. And then we want to right click on our output for our table and add display, because we want those addresses so we can come up with a mailing list. Now we're going to scroll this over here. We're going to click on library 56. And there's a few ways to run a tool or a model. You can select everything and hit run. Have nothing selected, hit run. You can go to model and hit run entire model. If I were to select only the buffer portion and hit run, it would only run that portion of the model. That's not what we want. So we want to go to model with nothing selected or the entire thing selected and hit run. It's completed the tool. We have our buffer and we have our table, which is more important. So we're going to open up our table. We have 918 people within the half mile that use of that one apartment complex. Now, what they want to do is they want us to make some variables where we can input. And we're just going to save our model and then shut it down. We can X out of our search. Now, if I double click on this, all I can do is run the tool. I can't really input anything. I want to change that. So I want to go right click, edit, And what I want to do is, maybe I don't want a half mile, maybe I want a quarter of a mile. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a variable from a parameter for distance. I'm going to put this box here so it's just easier to see. And I'm going to make this a model parameter. Then I'm going to come over here for the output of the table, and I'm going to make that a model parameter as well. Now, I forgot to tell you this when we ran it the first time. When you run a tool, you get a drop shadow over under the tool. That just shows you that it succeeded. If there are, we'll run it again just to see what it looks like, so I can explain better. So notice the P's next to these. That means they're parameters. So we're just going to X out of this, save our options. Now we can double click this. And here we can now put in a distance of a quarter mile. And we can change the name to complex 56. And click OK. We can close. We're going to open up our attribute table. And now we have 504 people living in a quarter of a mile. And as you can see, the default is always half a mile, because that's what we put in the model. So let's go back to edit. These are the drop boxes I told you about. And they appear under the outputs and the tools, showing you that these were successful. Now, if all these up here showed up and then these failed, we would know where it's pretty much breaking just by looking at it. And that's it for this tutorial.